Hey there, as a Latter day Lights listener, I want to give you a very special gift today my brand new book, Faith to Stay. This book is filled with inspiring stories, powerful discoveries, and even fresh insights to help strengthen your faith during the storms of life. So, if you're looking to be inspired, uplifted, and spiritually recharged, just visit faithtostay.com. Now, let's get back to the show. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Branley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear how a childhood of abuse and no schooling propelled one man to become a loving father and a trauma-informed leader. Welcome to Latter day Lights. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Latter day Lights. We're so glad you're here with us today, and we're really excited to introduce Calvin Bagley to the show. Welcome, Calvin.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Alicia and Scott.
Yeah, of course. So, Calvin, we're on 3 different time zones here. A couple hours in the past from me and an hour in the past from Scott. Tell everyone, where are you recording from right now?
So I'm recording from my home in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I have lived most of the time since after my mission.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So not before your mission?
No, actually, I was raised in northern Utah, outside of the area of Vernal, Utah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Now, did you move to Vegas for a girl? Did you?
Yeah, well, I wish it was that cool, but I did meet the girl in Las Vegas. Does that count?
It counts.
Okay, good. I moved to Las Vegas because my older brother was here and was giving me an opportunity to get on my feet after a pretty interesting and difficult upbringing.
Okay, gotcha. Well, the girl that you met, tell us, did you married, kids? What do you?
Yes,
What do you do?
My wife, Carissa, she's from Idaho Falls area. Actually, Shelley, for those of who know where that little smaller town is, wonderful place. But she had come to Las Vegas because she had a full ride scholarship to UNLV, and I had come to Las Vegas because I had a connection with my brother and his wife, and they were helping me to get into school after being raised without schooling. And we met at the Institute building, and it was a long time. It wasn't a courtship. It started out with just getting to know each other, and then lives took different directions. And then later we reconnected. So we knew each other for the better part of I don't know, 8 years or something before we were married. And now we're married. Live in Las Vegas. Have 2 children. My eldest son is 13. My daughter is 7. Which, I'm kind of like an old dad. I'm 50 years old. I turned 50 a couple weeks ago. That was actually the launch of my book happened around my 50th birthday. But I'm so happy because I think I'm a much better dad in my 40s and 50s than I ever would have been in my 20s.
I just turned 52, just at the beginning of August.
Oh, happy birthday.
Well, and apparently you have some vampire blood in you.
Thank you. I guess my daughter's really into vampires because of this, that all this Disney stuff right now. So she would consider that a compliment, and I do too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was shocked when you told me your age just now. I was like, wait, what? I seriously underestimated. So,
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I got a lot more white in my beard than you do.
Well, just when they say it keeps you young, I don't know if it makes you older or keeps you young, but having a 7-year-old, all my friends are young, so I feel young.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
I feel young still. I can't believe I'm 50, but I don't feel it.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on you. Calvin, why don't you go ahead and tell us where your story begins?
Sure. I recently wrote a book called Hiding from the School Bus, and it tells the story of my life. And I wrote it really for my family and for my loved ones, and kind of a memoir piece. And it may have meaning to a broader audience. And so I'm sharing it and being very open about it, even though it's very personal. And so in a way, I've kind of opened my heart up and my soul and shown it to the world. But it starts in a small area outside of Vernal, Utah. where I was born. I was born in the Vernal Hospital, but my parents didn't live there. They lived out on a ranch, a Ute tribal ranch, very far away. My father was the foreman for the tribal ranch, and it was 20 miles down a potholed, road for oil field road, followed by 20 more miles down a dirt road. And there was my family there, kind of at the end of the world outside of Vernal, Utah, with no neighbors and no one around us. And the only time that my family left this tiny little ranch was to go to church. And so out of that started this necessity of homeschooling the children. And I was the seventh of 9 children. So I was born in Vernal. My parents brought me home from the hospital out to this, this very small ranch house out in the middle of nowhere that was actually really a trailer house. And my mother really suffered from depression, I believe, undiagnosed, and postpartum depression and what have you.
Mhm.
And she handed me to my sister, who was 14 years older than me. I was just turning 14 when I was born, and said, this one is yours. And I really believed that I've realized now that my body believed my sister to be my mother, and she provided all the mothering for the first years of my life. And out of this necessity, living so far in the middle of nowhere, we were homeschooled. But it wasn't, it started out as homeschooling. And my sister, who's the oldest, and many of my older siblings, they attended some school. But by the time I was old enough to learn to read, schooling just wasn't happening in our home any longer. And instead of it being homeschooling, it's what I call no schooling. I mean, we were no schooled. There wasn't books. There weren't study guides or anything like that. We didn't have lecture time. We literally just worked and stayed hidden from the school bus. So that's why the title of my book, Hiding from the School Bus. When the school bus would come by, we would hide. And my parents said, you don't want to be caught by the school bus. It's going to take you to school. It's going to, you're going to learn these terrible things. Everyone at school is bad. They had a deep ingrained suspicion of all institutions, whether other than religion, particularly, the church, but any other institution like the government, healthcare, schools, all of these things were bad and would teach you evil. And so my parents began to get these more and more extreme beliefs the longer that they were isolated in this place. And it started out as, we're going to homeschool our kids, and then it turned into chocolate is against the word of wisdom, and wearing shorts even for boys is wrong. And so I was wearing playing church basketball in jeans because, wasn't allowed to wear shorts. And there were many of these other interesting and bizarre boutique beliefs. And so I call the kind of upbringing a fundamentalist upbringing, but it lacked polygamy. I mean, my parents we went to church every Sunday and we practiced the religion, and we practiced our faith. But they had all these weird things that they had added to it that weren't really part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But we were raised with those beliefs, and they would come home from church and talk about everyone else that was at church, all the things they were doing wrong, and how no one else was living up to the standards, and only us. But at home, I was being abused, and there was physical abuse, there was sexual abuse, there was all kinds of verbal abuse and things that were happening in our home. And so for me, there was just this disconnect that I began to realize very early on, that what was being taught in church and by my primary teacher and other things was not what we were living at home, even though my parents professed that we were the holy ones, we were the most righteous, or they were doing it the right way and everyone wasn't. And so this was the tumultuous upbringing that I was experiencing as a child that really created in me a lot of question about whether I was good enough, or whether I knew anything, or whether the church was the place that I wanted to be when I grew up, and many other very confusing things for a child. So that was kind of my beginning. As I got older, I wasn't hiding from the school bus anymore because I feared it or believed exactly what my parents were saying. By the time I was a teenager, I realized, by associating with other kids at church, that I really didn't know anything. And if I did argue with my parents to the point that they allowed me to go to high school, which, no one in my family ever went to high school, but if I somehow succeeded in that, which I wanted so badly, then I would just make a fool of myself because I knew that I knew nothing. I didn't know
Mm.
times tables. When I was 7 years old, my sister, who was 10 years older than me, so my third sister, she taught me to read. I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I really want to learn to read. And my mom said, well, I guess you're ready. And I was 7 years old. And I had inadvertently, because there were some remnants of our education prior remaining in the house. So in the house, around the top of the living room was the alphabet, but I didn't know which way it started. And so I walk downstairs and I would start on one side of the room and I would work all of my way around and try to memorize it and prepare myself to learn to read. And so I memorized Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, G, F, E, D, C, D, A. And I had it backwards because I didn't know which way it started. And, today people laugh and they say, oh, that's a great party trick. And it is, but to me, it has a lot more meaning. I really didn't know.
Mhm.
So my sister helped me to read, and she taught me to read using a phonics course, and that was the full education that I received. Essentially, my father always
Awesome.
said, "Teach a child to read, and they'll learn everything else when they're ready." And I hate to say that in a way I proved him right on that point because I did learn things later, and I go on to graduate from college, which is a mountain that I climbed. But um, for many of my siblings, it didn't work out so well. So um, when I was uh, when I was 8 years old, I was baptized in the church as 8 years old. 8-year-old children are, typically,
Mhm.
and that began my personal relationship with my Heavenly Father, where I began to feel things for myself that had been talked about. And there was a lot of teaching and preaching in my home. Unfortunately, a lot of it became very triggering for me later because it was accompanied with anger and fighting and other violence. But, my parents would do scripture study and other things, but it always had this heavy weight on it. Or family home evening was like a fight, and just there was so much fighting and so much anger and all these things happening in my home. But refuge was at church. And my earliest primary teacher, her name was Wilma Robb, and she was a saint, just a wonderful woman in her like 70s, and just loved the children, loved me. And in one of the tragic moments of my childhood, she'd gone to town, as we said when I was a kid, with my family. This was when we had moved to a place that there were some people around, not that many. And on the way home, we were in a car accident, and my primary teacher, Wilma, died after having been struck. We struck a horse, and the horse came into the passenger seat and crushed her. And I saw
Oh,
my primary teacher there, just not even looking like herself. Completely, it was a terrible scene, and it just broke me, just completely broke me.
Mm.
But I knew that Wilma loved me, and sometimes I wasn't sure of love in other places. And those things, the feelings that I had, being baptized and being confirmed a member of the church, the teachings of Wilma and others led me to begin to have my own testimony and begin to separate my parents from the gospel. And it's one of the things that makes, there's a very, very well-known memoir by Tara Westover. It's called Educated. Literally millions and millions and millions of people have read it.
yeah.
And she was raised in a very similar situation as me with kind of this extreme religious belief and homeschooling and what have you. She was raised in eastern Idaho. And many of her stories I could tell you are so much like the stories I grew up with. And many of the people that her family knew, my family also knew, because the homeschooling was kind of like this tight-knit community at the time. And so it's people like the Singer and Swap families that bombed a church. Those were friends of my father. They practiced polygamy, and my dad didn't condone that, but almost everything else he had common ground with them on. And in fact, at one point, he wanted my sister to marry one of their sons. So we're close to all this extremism and what have you. And so my point about Tara Westover, for example, is that it's much easier, and it makes a lot of sense to just throw out your beliefs and throw out your parents' beliefs and throw out the church and everything with all the bad things that happened in your childhood. And, if someone's listening and that's the situation that you feel you're in, how could good people, supposedly, right, church people, hurt me?
Right.
Right.
Then I would say to those people that God is greater than that, and that faith is greater than that, and that there is peace in following what you know is true in your heart. I love the quote, doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith or doubt your belief. But so for me, I continue to follow and began to separate my parents and their beliefs from, which were some were true, to the true beliefs of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I eventually prepared for and just prepared to serve a mission. And I sort of, I say in my book that I disinvited my parents from that. And what I mean by that is I told my parents I was going to go for me and not because of them or for them. Because as I became a teenager, I began to have my own rebellions, and my rebellions would be different than a lot of people's rebellions. My rebellion was I got a job, and my mother really didn't like that because she felt that having a job and money and everything would expose me to bad influences, and that had tainted some of my older siblings who had all rebelled. I mean, they had all essentially run away and done things that my parents considered rebellious to differing degrees. So I received my mission call, and it came in the mail. I opened the packet, and it says, Elder Bagley, you've been called to serve a mission, to be representative of the Church of Jesus Christ, and you've been called to serve in the Brazil Curitiba mission. And I looked at that and said, oh my gosh, I'm going to Africa. Because I just had no understanding of world geography or anything, So I was like, wow, I'm going to Africa. And I was so excited. And you're going to speak Portuguese. And I'm like, what is that? It was amazing. It was so exciting. So, I pull out a map and I'm like, oh, okay, South America. That's cool too. And I went into the MTC in the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. By the way, I'm used to telling my story to people that are not members of our church. And so, which has been so enjoyable to have the opportunity to expose people who usually don't know or understand the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and think of it, differently than what it is. Have an opportunity to explain to them all of the similar beliefs that we have and faith in Christ and things. So if I say some things that you're like, well, that doesn't really sound like something someone would say, in sacrament meeting. Well, I really have been enjoying and finding common ground in my vernacular of how to speak to people who are not members of our faith about our faith. So it's been really fun. But so when I went to the Missionary Training Center, I had to learn Portuguese, which I was so excited about, but I really had to learn English because I didn't know what a noun was and what a verb was and what conjugating a verb meant. I didn't understand any of those things. And so that was my first, I would say the MTC was my first educational experience, true educational experience, where I sat in a classroom and was instructed and had to learn something. And for me, it was Portuguese. And I went to Brazil and I became very good at Portuguese, had some incredible spiritual experiences. I write about a few of them in my book. Wonderful people, wonderful experiences, and also some interesting experiences where some of my companions challenged me on some of the beliefs that I didn't even, they weren't necessarily beliefs that I held, they were just beliefs that had been taught me by my parents, and they were they were cultural in nature. For example, my parents believed that Star Wars was evil, that there is no, you can't have the Force because the Force, says that power comes from one source, and that the user can make it good or evil. And they said, I thought that was very blasphemous, that, good is from God and evil is from Satan. And so they would not allow anything to do with Star Wars. And so I had this companion that really challenged me on that and some other things. And you know, it's not to say that the theology of Star Wars is perfect, but we can find good in a lot of things. And
Yeah.
he kind of taught me some of that, and challenged me on some things. And so, yeah, my missionary experience was incredible. And I came home from my mission, and all of my companions were going off to college. Some were going to BYU, and some were going to. I had a companion who was going to Stanford, and some really, really prestigious schools and things. And I was saying, I want to make more out of my life. And so I got home from my mission and went to a store and purchased a study guide for the GED, and sat at home at nights. I worked in the day, came home at night, and would study and study. And after several months, I took the GED exam, and I passed that exam. And just before my 22nd birthday, I got my high school diploma in the form of a GED.
Awesome.
My father, he saw that and he said, what do you need to do that for? Do you need someone to tell you that you're smart? Is that why you need to do this? So he still was not um, supportive of what I
Wow.
was doing. So at that point, I said, well, now I'm going to try to get into college. I don't, you know what? If I can just get there and take one thing at a time, I can figure it out. And so I went back to the store and I purchased the ACT study guide, and it was like a big book. I'm like, okay, I'm going to study to take the ACT
Yeah.
exam. I studied for months. I showed up at the for the test, and I'm sitting in this room with 16 and 17-year-olds who were getting ready, doing like juniors in high school and what have you, getting ready to take their ACT. And the great thing about the ACT, by the way, is you can't fail it. Everybody gets a score, right? So I
Yeah.
didn't fail it, but I did so poorly that you could pretty much say that I failed it. And my score was a 16, which was so low that I mean, there's just so much you can't stuff, you know, 12 grades and 12 years of school into your head in months, and
Mhm.
understand it all, and do it on your own and everything. And so I was really let down. It was a very depressing, major letdown for me. So it's the month that I'm turning 22. I've been home from my mission for a year. I, I've got my GED, but I don't feel like I'm any closer to school. And there's an aspect of this that I'm sure someone could relate to. You just don't feel like you're good enough. You don't feel like you measure up. Everyone around you is normal, and you're not. You're different.
Mhm.
You know, you're. I don't want to say stupid, but you feel stupid. I mean, it's a strong, it's a word that's not. If my daughter's listening right now, she's gonna be like, "Dad, you said stupid." You know, you just don't feel like you're good enough, like you are normal. And all I wanted in life was to be normal. Like, honestly, I just wanted to feel like I could be in a conversation and
Mhm.
understand what was being said. I had a missionary companion that said something about the Holocaust. I had no idea what he was talking about. I did not know what that term meant. I didn't understand about World War II, even though my grandfather had served in World War II. I just had no understanding of the world. So
Wow.
after I failed the ACT, my older brother, who was, one of my parents' more rebellious children, had sort of like repositioned his life and had married this wonderful woman, had gotten married in the temple, and he had a son prior out of wedlock, and then he sort of just kind of changed his life around. And he said, "Listen, why don't you come down to Las Vegas, which is where I still live today? Why don't you come down to Las Vegas? We'll help you out. We'll give you a place to stay." And his wife was a registered nurse, and she had graduated from college. And he said, "Julie will help. She's going to help you. She's going to help you to learn and to get into college." And I said, "I'll do that." So I left this little town up in Utah. We had moved to a little town by this point called La Pointe, the small town outside of Vernal. I came down to Las Vegas, and my sister-in-law was incredible. She went with me to this store called Learning is Fun, and we purchased these all the books, grade books for math, because that was my biggest challenge. I just did not understand math at all. And
Mhm.
she opened the books and she's going through them and saying, "Hey, you know what? Where do you understand? Like, what level are you at?" And we went all the way down to third grade. We got down to third grade. That's the place that I understood math. It was like very, very, very basic addition, subtraction, multiplication. Throw in a
Yeah.
fraction, and I had no idea. So we purchased those grade books, and she sat with me at their kitchen table on nights after long days of work and would explain things to me that I could not figure out in those grade books and help me to prepare. And
Wow.
then arranged for me to meet with a college
Aw.
admissions counselor at UNLV. And I went in and said, I'd been declined by every school I had applied to because I had no transcript. I'd done terribly on the ACT. And this counselor, she said, you know what, Calvin, I love your story. I appreciate that you're in here talking to me. I explained to her, I've been working my whole life since the time I was a child. I had no education. I've everything I've accomplished at this point, I've kind of figured out on my own. And she said, we can't admit you to UNLV, but we can allow you to audit classes. So come to school and you can go for 2 semesters and audit classes. And if you get a passing grade after 2 semesters, then we will admit you, and those classes will count toward your degree. And that is how
Cool.
I got into UNLV. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yes.
That is
So
really cool.
I wish I could say that from there it was like smooth sailing and what have you, but it wasn't. It took me over 10 years to get my degree in business administration. I wasn't accustomed to classrooms, lectures. The first time I ever
Mhm.
took a test or wrote a term paper or anything was in college, and so it was a lot to adjust to. And so I took some deviations, and one of the interesting ones was that I became a flight attendant for United Airlines because my sister had married a flight attendant for Delta, and he told me what he was doing, and I said, that sounds really fun. So I ended up moving to
Mhm.
Chicago and became a flight attendant for United Airlines and had this really incredible experience where um, I was just flying all over the world, experiencing all different cultures, living with people of totally different backgrounds and totally different, experiences in life and beliefs and what have you. They all became like my closest friends and family, and learned this love for um, travel that has stayed with me my entire life. I've been to all 50 states and all 7 continents and things, and just absolutely love to go places and see things. But in the back of my mind, there was always this thing, you you can do more. Not to say that a flight attendant
Mhm.
isn't a lot. It was amazing. I loved it, but you can do more. Go back to school, go back to college. And then I was a flight attendant when 9/11 happened. I was in a plane on the runway at
Oh,
O'Hare, was
wow.
getting ready to take off when everything ground to a halt. And back then, the best cell phones weren't even Blackberries yet. I mean, they were just flip phones. And so it took a long time, many hours for us to return to the gate and to even understand what had occurred that day. And so that's one of the
Mhm.
interesting
Yeah.
stories that I write about in my book. And after that, I said, okay, it's time for me to go back to school. And so I returned to Las Vegas, and this time I came with a different intention. And by this point, I was in my late 20s, and that is when I met my wife, or kind of re-met my wife. We had met before, and we spent time together, and eventually we're married, and was, hands down, the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Um, but I come back to school to UNLV. I graduate with my business administration degree, begin to work for a bank and do a whole bunch of things at the bank, and eventually start my own business. Um, and we begin to, my wife and I, we struggled with some things. We struggled with some fertility and what have you. But that's why I'm 50 years old and have a 7-year-old daughter. But now we have our son and our daughter. We have our little family here in Las Vegas, and we have our business, and people work with us and for us, and we built this culture around taking care of people and loving people and doing what's right for people, regardless of whether it's difficult. And our company grew. We help people with Medicare. Actually, is what we do. We're an insurance agency that helps people with Medicare, and we've helped over 60,000 people in all 50 states to choose their Medicare insurance now. And these things kind of began to grow out of out of this belief of, to always do the right thing. And in church, throughout all of this, I stayed. I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. And my testimony grew and grew. And um, we were so blessed. I mean, I connect the success of our business and our personal life and everything to the gospel and the church. And about, well, I guess it's been 6 years ago since I've been released. So 6 years ago, so prior to that, I was called to be a bishop and served as the bishop of my ward. And that was an incredible and the most difficult and challenging and wonderful and terrible experience of my life. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and I would wish it on everybody.
I see Scott over here just nodding. Yep.
Yeah, right.
I'm going like this. I was the bishop too.
Yeah. It's like no one should have to do that, and everyone should do that.
Everyone should have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It was really a challenge, and but a great blessing. And I was blessed with so incredible people and relationships during that time. And so, all of this to say that that the only reason I'm here is because I felt the hand of God throughout my life. If I mean, there's so many places where I was just so close to I don't know, just giving up on my faith, giving up on my beliefs. But that just those experiences of feeling the warmth of the Spirit, when I was baptized, when I was confirmed, serving on my mission. Wow, I mean, the experiences of blessing people and teaching people and those things just gave in me this belief that I clung to, even at times of despair when I was like, I'm never going to be able to go to college. I'm never going to be normal. I'm never going to whatever. And I feel like it was faith that led me through, which that's why I've told my story, honestly, because so many people give up on the faith. And then about maybe 5 years ago, it was after I'd been released as a bishop. So I was released as a bishop over 6 years ago. So about 5 years ago, I had a little more time and I said, okay, now I'm going to focus even more deeply on my business. And I began to join different business networking groups. And I found myself in this group called Genius Network with a man, Joe Polish, who is very well-known business leader, business like connector and everything. And man, I've really come to love. And I'm in this room listening to incredible business leaders. And there's a business leader that I really, really look up to, and he had written a book that I led my business based on his book, and it's called Traction. And his name is Gino Wickman, and he is, if anyone who's in business can appreciate like who Gino Wickman is, look him up. He's amazing. If you don't know who he is, he's coached so many people in business and taught people how to scale and grow their business, and someone I just respect. And we're sitting in this room. I'm just so excited. I'm going to learn from this great business mind. And Joe Polish of the Genius Network, he has this saying. He says, sell them what they want and give them what they need. And he's talking about entrepreneurs like me. He's like, get them in the room and they think they want to learn about marketing. And then you're going to tell them, hey, you need to deal with, you're the problem, right? Why is your company not growing? It's because of you. Yeah. You're the problem, right? So Gino's in this room and he goes, listen, I'm going to tell you a story. And he starts telling us a story about going to a conference where someone tells him to like look inside of his heart and visualize this and open his heart and see what he sees inside. And he just sees darkness and black. And he kind of takes us through this similar exercise. I'm in this room with just, about 100 people. And I close my eyes and do the same visualization. And I understand where he's coming from. And I see inside of me shame. And I don't know where it's coming from. And this lack of love for myself. And I'm like, I mean, I fought and fought and fought. I did things that didn't seem possible. I got my education. I stayed in the church when almost all of my siblings and other people, have not. I became a bishop and I served and served. And I loved my congregation. I loved my youth. I sent so many young people on missions, and I just, they're like they're like my boys, and young women who and many of them also went on missions. They're my girls, and why don't I love
Mhm.
myself? Why do I see darkness inside of me and shame and guilt or whatever it is? I don't know what it is. Why don't I love myself? Because other people are opening their hearts and they're seeing rainbows and butterflies and bunny rabbits and unicorns, or I don't know what they're seeing, light, happiness. Why am I not seeing that? And that led me to my most recent part of my journey. And also the reason why I then said, I'm going to tell my story. And it was to find out why I'm feeling that shame and guilt, and why I don't love myself. And it led me to counseling. And I always had avoided counseling because I was concerned. I say I had gone to maybe 3 or 4 different counselors, and they would do like talk therapy, stuff like that. And it just didn't seem like it did anything. And it also concerned me that so many of them didn't share my beliefs. And finally, I
Mm-hmm.
found someone who shares my beliefs, who shares my faith, and who also is, counseling people and helping them to work through traumas and what have you. And that was the right mix for me. And so I began to do some work to understand, why does my body react certain ways? Like when my wife says, "All right, guys, let's have scripture study." I want to have scripture study, but why do I feel tension, not understanding
Mhm.
that my
Yeah.
body is reacting as if I'm sitting in the home as, a child in my father's home, and it doesn't realize that that's past. That happened a long time ago, but it's not in the past for me yet. And so that
Right.
this experience of working with a therapist who brings faith and Christ and my beliefs and shares them with me and brings them into this with me, has been an incredible experience that has led me to a place where I have been able to release a lot of those things, understand where they're coming from. Sometimes triggers still happen. I never liked the word trigger, but now I understand it. I didn't
Mhm.
realize that was happening to me, that I would have reactions to things, almost
Mm-hmm.
visceral reactions to a word or a saying or a perceived slight or something, because I had not put my own traumas into the past. And I'm not
Mhm.
perfect. I've got a long way to go. I'm still working with my great therapist, John, who I love so much. And and I've followed so many. I mean, there have been so many incredible mentors in the church and in business and in life, but I've gotten so much better. And the thing that I can tell you that I am most proud of personally, aside from my family, of course, is that today I can say I love myself. That I can see all the different parts of me, whether it's the part that was hurt, the part that was angry, and the part that was being shielded, and the part that's sad, and the part that feels like it's not good enough. Right? I've seen all those parts of me now, and embrace them all, and say, you know what? I'm very proud to be where I am today. And when I was able to work to get to the point where I could really love myself, then I look back and say, everything that happened is okay, and I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change the fact that I didn't have an education and I had to struggle and fight for it. I wouldn't change my parents and some of their wild, wild beliefs. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change losing my primary teacher in such a terrible way, and I wouldn't change that. Or else I might not arrive where I am today. And so throughout this journey, Heavenly Father has put in front of me the right people, the right opportunities. I call them the ladders to climb, the right ladders to climb, help me to arrive here, knowing that I would progress and that I could progress and become here. Not pushing me here, not saying I was predestined
Mm-hmm.
to be here, but giving me every opportunity to be here, and probably farther than I am. But I made it to here. And I'm very grateful for that. And I feel like my greatest accomplishment to this point, outside of my faith in Christ and my wife and my children, is to reach a point where I love myself and can embrace everything that has brought me here. So that is the arc of my story. That is what I'm sharing in my book. I would call it a nutshell, but it's a really big nutshell that has brought me to where I am today, speaking with you.
Wow.
That's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh. It's so funny because I feel like we're kindred spirits in a sense. And not that, I mean, my upbringing was a little different, but there were some things, like I did have some sexual abuse and stuff that happened. And my parents, I love
Sorry.
them to death, but it's okay. It really is okay. Like you said, it's not okay that it happened, but I'm okay. Right? Like it's one of those things. Like I've done the work to do better at this stage in life. And my parents too. My parents have always had kind of well, my mom she was always like, yeah, get educated. But my dad was like, college, he had a very specific saying, college is for people who are overeducated and not very nice. Let's just say that. Right. And it was almost like this hardcore belief from my dad that if you didn't physically work hard, like if you worked smarter, not harder, that must mean that you're not a good person. That must mean you're taking advantage of other people. If you're charging too much for your services, it means that you're taking advantage of the little person and not that you're actually getting paid for your skills and for your education. And so I had a lot of like issues around money and education growing up that kind of threw me into this whole weird state from the age of 18 to 40, where I'm like relearning all this stuff. And I'm like, and when you're talking about your body and how your body reacts to things, oh my gosh, that happens all the time. And I hate the word triggers too. I feel like it's just overused and used improperly now. And
Agreed.
so there are very real things that happen in my body to certain words, situations, people that look a certain way sometimes, right? Like the ones who resemble some of my abusers from the past that I just instantly, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? And it's so hard to kind of take yourself and be like, okay, wait, this is what's happening. Calm down, brain. You're safe. Everything you're feeling is stuff that happened a long time ago. That's not going to happen right now. You're older, you're smarter, you're safe, and it is like such a struggle. So to hear the things that you've gone through and to see how far you came, that's just not only amazing to me, but I think that so many people have worked so hard to try to make everything easy for the next generation, right? Like I know I do it for my kids, unfortunately, because we grew up in a rougher neighborhood and I had to struggle for a lot of things. I gave my kids a lot. And now my almost 19-year-old, he tells me, he's like, Mom, he's like, I've got friends and they're talking about they had to deal with this and they had to deal with that. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know, the worst I have to deal with is my parents tell me I have to clean my private bathroom. You know what I mean? Like share the bathroom with anyone. And it's like, oh, did I mess up by giving too much to my kids, making it too easy for them because now they don't know how to struggle. They don't know how to, work hard for something. And not all of them, but you know what I'm saying? It's like one of those like, man, like I just flipped it over. And how do you as a father avoid that? Or are you kind of in the same boat where you're like, here, children have everything?
I totally relate. Because I mean, it's hard. I worry about the same things about, they say hard times create strong people or and soft times create soft
Right.
people or something like that. I do worry about that. And my wife and I try to be very intentional. But my wife also had to teach me, and I read about this, how she taught me to love our children because some of those things I equated with love erroneously. And my kids, yeah, they're really not struggling for anything. That's the truth. I mean, they have chores and they have responsibilities and what have you, but not like the struggles that I experienced or that you're talking about. And I'm very happy that they won't, hopefully, will never struggle with the types of abuse that I struggled and experienced. But not to say that they don't have to do hard things, right? So I tried very hard to teach my kids to do hard things, like just Saturday morning. So yesterday, I took my daughter, she's 7 years old. I took her for a jog and was talking with her about, because she's like, oh, I'm really tired. I'm kind of getting a side ache. And I was telling her, there are people that their mind can push them past, it can push their body past. And I started talking to her about people who run 100 miles and all these other things. And she was like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, all right, Dad, I'm ready to run again. So try to teach them those things, and to be strong. But hopefully, the advantage that I feel like I gained from struggle, I hope that they gain from love. And we'll see.
Okay, I'm gonna bump you
Yeah.
for that. That's amazing. I, I love that thing so much. Can you repeat it one more time?
I think I said the advantage that I gained from struggle, I hope that they will gain from love.
It's so good. I love that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Alicia, there's another thing that you said that made me think for a minute. You were talking about, being having reactions. I really hate the word trigger because it's
I
being
know.
used improperly so much right now.
Yes.
But having reaction and reacting to things, right? Um, there were two books that have helped me so much, and they informed me in different ways. But one of them informed me in helping me find the right therapist for me. And so that one was The Body Keeps the Score. It's a great book. So many people have read it. It talks about how the science and some of the therapies, but the science behind why our body reacts to things, and that literally in our cells, we can have there is memory within cells, almost
Right.
like our entire body has a brain, right? And
Yep.
and our right down to our cells, they've proven can have reactions to things because it's afraid that the trauma is about to happen again. And so The Body Keeps the Score is talking about how to put the past in the past and teaches some therapies around that. So that's an interesting secular book. And then the other one that has been a great blessing for me, and we're here on Latter-day Lights, so obviously the scriptures, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price have blessed my life infinitely. But speaking of secular books, there's one called The Power of Now, and it's by a philosopher, Eckhart Tolle. And some people consider him a religious leader, but he's not connected to a religion. But he's um, a philosopher, German philosopher, and
Right.
his book really helped me to quiet my mind and to just observe. And for me, it has so many connections to the gospel because I don't believe that I am my mind. And I don't believe that I am my body. I believe that I am my soul, and that I have a mind and a body. And that's, we talk about that we live in the premortal existence, and we came here to have the immortal experience. But so often we get caught in our mind, and we think that we are our mind. And he goes to great lengths to dispute that and to say, your mind can just run crazy, and you have to control your mind, but you can't control your mind by thinking, because if you're thinking, that's your mind. And so he teaches the way to control the mind is to observe. And he talks about we are the observer. And I think of the observer as the spirit. And so my spirit is the observer. And when my mind starts to go crazy, and when I start to feel tension rising in my chest, that's my mind and my body. Then I just observe it. What am I thinking? What's passing through my mind? What am I feeling? And in those moments when I have that trigger or that reaction or whatever we're going to call it, as I've gotten better about observing where I've become tense in my body, which is for me is usually in my breathing in my chest, and what is happening in my mind, I don't have to change it. I just have to see it, just observe it, and then it resolves.
I was gonna say you're gonna go from someone that had no education to like this major philosopher as you get older.
It's my progression.
I was to say, and not only like that you have it, but you're sharing it. I love that you're like out there. You're speaking, right? You're sharing your story with other people, not just in your book, but in speaking engagements. Is that correct?
Yeah. So now, in because my company's been very successful in Medicare, I have become a leader in my space, and I travel around. This week I'll be in. Last week I was in Los Angeles. Excuse me. I was in Los Angeles and San Diego on two different stages. And next week I'll be in San Jose and in Orlando. And I have an
Wow.
opportunity to speak. And usually I'm speaking, and I go to Washington D.C. and get the opportunity to speak with policymakers and politicians and things like that. And usually I'm speaking about things that I see that need to happen in Medicare, and how to improve that program from the perspective of insurance agents and the people that we serve, because we work with
Mhm.
every insurance company, and so we're not focused on what an insurance company wants. We're looking at what our clients need, and then we're representing them instead of the insurance company, instead of the government. And so we represent our clients, and so it gives me a good perspective to take back to Washington. But my point is that in doing that, it has given me a platform to also share insights and what have you. And just last week, it was really incredible. I was sitting on a panel, and the person leading the discussion, he said, "Hey, Calvin, we have a question for you now." And I'm expecting everything always related to Medicare. And he says, "I read your book, Hiding from the School Bus," and and then he led into, how does this relate to some things in Medicare and this and that and the other. And it just gave me an opportunity to share and connect my life experience to what's happening in business. And that opportunity is happening more and more often, and that's been great. And then releasing the book also has led me to being on a lot of podcasts. And most of the podcasts that I've had the opportunity to be on are Christian podcasts, where I'm sharing my story and sharing my faith in Christ and talking about my beliefs, and usually with people of other Christian faiths, or non-denominational Christian faiths and what have you. And so it has been a really, really great experience, and opened up a lot of opportunity for me to share, our beliefs as members of the church, and to connect them, because there's so much. I mean, we're 99% that we have in common, but everyone wants to focus on the 1% that is different, right?
Wow.
Yeah, for real.
So, what's your now that you've written the book and you've kind of reflected on your life and things as you've written it? Like, what do you see going forward? What do you think the future holds?
That's a really good question, and I get asked that quite a bit, because usually people release a book with a purpose, and my purpose really was to tell my story, and a lot of it is legacy for my family and my friends, because I have held most of this in. The story that I shared with you, many people close to me have no idea, and a lot of people look at me, and particularly in today's political environment and everything, and they think, well, he's probably born of privilege and what have you, because he's had great success in life and business success, I'm talking about. And so how do you share that? And so I said, I'm going to share the whole picture and the whole story in a way that everything can be shared. But I didn't have this idea that, oh, this is going to be. I didn't have this idea that this book itself is going to be, New York Times bestseller, or that everyone in the world is going to read it. I really wrote it because I wanted to share to the people close to me, and give them the experience of what my life was, and what I'm very proud of accomplishing in my life. And then my heart is open. If there is more that 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 our Father in heaven would, if there's more that is meant for the book, then I'm open to that. If, as far as it is meant to go, is a few select people or even just the people who know me and now understand me on a different level, I'm happy with that too. So that's where I am today. Is just open and willing to receive whatever occurs. In business, I'm known as a quick start. So, I like to start new things. So I'm always starting something new. I now am involved in a laboratory that does lab testing for, that does molecular testing for samples, instead of growing things in a petri dish. We're using science to discover very quickly what's in a sample. And so and I'm always starting new things. And so in business, I just want to keep creating. I just love to create. I love to create and to make new things, and to create community with people. And that's what I'm going to continue doing. And if the book is a part of that, then that's great. If it isn't, I'll tell you what it has done for me. It has allowed me to open up and share my story and made me completely open. And so when I'm on stage and I'm talking to people, or if I'm in a group, or if I'm with with colleagues in business, I feel like I have officially given myself permission to be myself and to be completely open.
Mm,
And that is enough if that's all that comes from it.
that's awesome.
Wow. See, we are kindred spirits, and so is Scott. Like, Scott is always starting new stuff, and he's really good at starting stuff and being successful. I'm really good at starting stuff and being like, that was fun. Let's do something else. But
Yeah, I feel like we're kindred spirits too, Calvin, because we have a very similar story.
Really?
Like I didn't start out in the middle of the backwoods, but we went on our missions about the same time. I got a degree in business administration. I'm an entrepreneur.
Love it.
So,
yeah,
it's crazy.
I love that. Well,
But
man, this has been such a good one. I always like when we have, I mean, I love all of our guests, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, I always feel something was meant for me in these stories, but truly with you, I just feel like you are such an inspiration of how to grow, how to use your past and your hardships and stuff like that in order to become more of who Heavenly Father wants you to be, and how to just be positive about the things in life that are thrown your way that Heavenly Father allows. I think that's one of the things that I try really hard to remember, is that God doesn't make things happen necessarily as much as he allows things to happen, and then he course corrects when they do, right? Or he just keeps us on a course as long as we're like doing what we need to do. And while, yeah, like I totally agree with you that there are so many things that have happened in my own life and that are continuing to happen now that are hard and ugly and unfair. If it means risking everything I've learned to change those things from the past, I'll just keep them. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather just keep them, and just knowing where I am now and how much I've grown and learned, because I wouldn't want to risk a little bit of discomfort, I guess, is really what it is, right? And maybe that's a mild word, right? But I wouldn't want to just get rid of some discomfort or some trauma or some whatever else if it means getting rid of all the things that had led me to this point.
That make you, right?
I love that.
The past is in service to you. It is in service to you, whatever it is that you want it to be, to mean, or to be. So if you want to be a victim, the past is in service to you, and you can be a victim. If you want to take the past and turn it into more, and have it inform you and help you to become more, it's in service to you. And the past, and because you can't change what happened, but you can change the meaning, and you can decide what it means. And so whatever it is that you want it to mean, it's in service to you.
I love that.
And you got a lot of good
bumper
quotes.
sticker number 2.
That's like 4 or 5 by
Actually,
now.
that's why I
For
wrote the
3.5
book.
years now.
Yeah, my bumper sticker website is ldsbumperstickers.com.
Hey, that'll be our next project cohesively.
Yeah. Here we go. Quick starts. I'll fire it up.
There we go. I love it.
Awesome. Well, Calvin, do you have any thoughts before we wrap up? Any final thoughts? Or
I really
you'd like to
enjoyed this.
share?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my story and to be here with you guys. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that someone finds some inspiration. If you want to learn more about my story, you can just go to hidingfromtheschoolbus.com, or search Hiding from the School Bus anywhere that you read or consume books. And it's a very heavy story, and I've had some people tell me they get into the first few paragraphs and say, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can read this." I promise that it turns out with a happy ending. But if it interests you, then look it up there on hidingfromtheschoolbus.com. And I hope that something I said today can be a benefit to someone.
Perfect. And we'll be sure to put the links for those in the description, so anyone can just click and find. But man, this has been so great. I love this. I like when my cheeks are hurting at the end of the show, as opposed to having all my makeup cried off. So this has been fantastic. You are just such a delight. So
Oh, I was just gonna thank him for coming on and thank everyone for tuning in to hear Calvin and his story today. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, go to latterdaylights.com or send us an email at latterdaylights@gmail.com and we'll have you on the show like Calvin.
Yeah, and absolutely, listeners, please make sure that you guys are commenting on here. Let us know what your favorite bumper sticker moment was. What we should make for the world to have. Tell Calvin just, what you think of his story and the life that he shared today. And be sure to do that 5-second missionary work. Hit that share button. You never know who needs to hear exactly what's talked about. So, all right. Well, with that, we are going to sign off until next week. Calvin, again, thank you so much. You are welcome to come back anytime and chat with us. Share any other story with us. We would love it.
Thank you, Scott and Alicia. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we have for you today. Make sure you join us next week for another episode of Latter-day. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.